everyone. Welcome to part 2 of today's Positive EV podcast, joined with Outsourced. We're moving on to our next topic now, which is actually going to be something a little more real world, the boomers would say, the stock market. So, Outsourced, I believe you have quite a bit of experience with the stock market.
Yeah, I mean, I studied it for a while. I worked there for a while. I think I'm above average. I wouldn't say I'm a guru or anything. I don't have a YouTube channel or a TikTok that I can show my investment product on, but I think I can give some pretty decent advice.
Nice. Speaking of advice, this is not all financial advice.
Yeah.
This is just
Yeah.
a snowman and a cat/gnome just talking about money and what we've done and what's helped us learn
Yeah,
and
and
grow.
I think very quickly, not to go off on too much of a tangent, but if you ever hear at least me personally in any of the channels talk, especially about stocks or crypto or anything like that, I don't think you'll ever hear me say I recommend you buy this or this is a good investment. And if I do, it's probably me being sleep deprived or having one too many adult beverages. More 99% of the time, what I'll say is I'll tell you this is what I'm thinking, and I kind of let you guys make that decision because one of the troubling things that has become really prevalent in our current social media driven investing community. And I don't think that's happening here, but I think it's just inherent. I don't think it's like any happening here any worse than anywhere else, but I think it's just inherent to the format and to the way we discuss is people taking things as gospel and just listening to what someone's saying and then doing that exact thing, which is a terrible way to invest. And it's very bad when I look on TikTok and I see people saying like, you need to buy the stock right now. It just, it hurts internally whenever I see that because it's kind of taking away the agency from people and trying to tell them this is what the best thing you should do is rather than understanding investing holistically and how it applies to them as opposed to just wanting big fat gains, bro.
Oh, all right. So now I just want to discuss just two different types of investing that we'll see just to start off with because that'll then roll into how we choose our investments. Active versus passive investing. Those are two
Yeah.
very, very, very different forms of investing. One has actually traditionally outperformed the other, uh, and which one tends to be more fun than the other?
Uh, yeah. So not only has it tended to outperform the other, but the just you guys don't have to wait till the end of the podcast. Passive investing has outperformed active investing.
It has
Not only does it, yeah,
absolutely.
not only does it, just as a little thought experiment, right? Okay, there's two different groups of investors. There's passive investors who are just buying the entire stock market, a little percentage of everything.
Me.
There's active investors, yeah, who are deciding to purchase little parts of it. Okay, well, how do you benchmark active investors? What is it that active investors are trying to do? Is a better way to phrase the question.
Yeah. So I myself am a passive investor. I'm the one that goes around buys just little bits of of different types of markets, like because I'm Australian, I'll buy part of the Australian share market or international market, or I'll even been buying part of the US stock market, just the general S&P 500 index funds, because after seeing how well they've outperformed in general over many years, I would much rather that.
Right. Yeah. So
Yeah,
So the way I think about it is there's two different groups of people. There's people who just want to be invested in the stock market and think it's a good investment, and there's people who think I want to be invested in the stock market, but also I can pick companies that are going to do better than the average person.
yeah,
Those are the two different groups, right? You have active investors who think that they're smarter than everyone, and you have passive investors who recognize we're all, when it comes down to it, we're all monkey brains and we're just trying to invest in our futures.
smooth brain.
Um, yeah,
We
the
are all
yeah
smooth brain.
the yeah the the thing that I always tell people, just sorry to get onto a rant immediately into our new topic. The thing I always tell people is, what is it that active investors are trying to do? They're trying to beat passive investors. So if you think that there's two specific investment groups, right? There's passive investors and active investors. Passive investors, by definition, will get a return that's very close to what the broad stock market gets, right?
Yep.
So if passive investors are getting a return, and there's only two different types of investors, which is it's a simplification because you have people who are invested in things as contra assets and things like that. Not to get off topic, assume that there's only two. If passive investors are always matching whatever the stock market does, right?
Mm-hmm.
Active investors also have to always be matching what the stock market does. Just conceptually, because if there's only two groups of people, one of them can have an outsized return than the other, and the other one be the market average, right?
Yep.
If passive investors are averaging the same as the market, then active investors have to average the same as the market. However, active investors trade more, and because active investors trade more, they're paying trading fees.
And
So
all the
just
taxes and oh my god.
yeah, exactly. So just from a high level, assuming that there was no assuming that there was no slippage or any of the other fun financial terms which are defining the bloodsuckers who take your money whenever you try to buy or sell something, the average active investor will do the same as the average passive investor. The mean, I should say, the mean active investor will do the same as the mean passive investor. And if you know the difference between mean and median, you kind of see where I'm going with this. Specifically because that's how the money has to work. For someone to do, the stock market is zero sum in that sense, where for someone to do better than the market average, another group of people would have to do worse. And
Yeah.
because you don't see that with passive investing, then active investing by its very nature, on average, will not do better than the other. In fact, it'll do worse because of exactly what you described, which are trading fees, taxes, things like that. The other thing that you see in active investing is that 95% of people do worse than what the average mean active investor does.
Yeah. Yeah.
For every 20 people who are investing, 19 of them do worse than the average, right? Which, if you think about it,
and that last person might only be at average.
yeah. Well, so what happens is, especially in active investing, is the stock market goes through these cycles where different things are kind of the new hot meme, and people. I don't want to point the finger specifically at Kathy Wood, but I think she's a really good example. You have people who are experts in a specific field, right?
Yep.
In Kathy Wood's case, it's meme stocks, and I don't mean to sound disparaging when I say meme stocks, but there are specific, fast-growing, cutting-edge tech in fields that are kind of trendy right now. You kind of look like a genius and she looks like a genius because the returns have been so good over the last 3 to 5 years.
Yep.
But a lot of it, and if you look historically, there have been a lot of mutual fund owners that have done extremely well, and they're that 1 out of 20 that have done remarkably well. The problem is, as an active investor, being the 1 out of 20 isn't something that is consistent, and the people who are consistent at it are the ones who are literally multi-billionaires. So
Yeah.
you're talking about
Warren Buffett.
Talking about Buffett, yeah. I mean,
Like,
Buffett's the one who always comes to mind.
Absolutely.
Einhorn.
He comes
All
to
these
mind
crazy-
because he says that he lives that life. The life is active investing. Like that's his whole deal, is that he will do that, but he's like, no one else can really put in the work. Just do passive investing because it's gonna be, you can't dedicate the time that I have.
Yeah, exactly, and that's actually a great way to phrase it. Is, do you think you know more about the stock market than Warren Buffett?
Yeah, that's
No.
That is
my
fantastic.
Answer's no. My answer's no.
My answer.
So I'm not going to try to bet against him, right? He actually has a
Absolutely.
really good. So if you know anything about Berkshire Hathaway, they have a reinsure. They own mortgage reinsurers. And he was talking about how you have two different. You can have two different insurance companies. One is selling a policy to the other as a way to do reinsurance, and the other one's buying the policy. And there are plenty of scenarios where both insurance brokers who are selling insurance to one and then buying insurance from the other, both of them will write a profit on their books.
Yep.
Which, if you understand how that works, it's zero sum. If someone who purchased insurance gets money, they get money from the person who sold it to them. So in no scenario can both people who bought and sold an insurance policy both make money on that policy. It just doesn't work. It's like a derivative essentially. It is a derivative. It's a financial derivative.
Yep.
But both people will overestimate how good they are at doing their jobs. So both will be like, "Oh, I'm going to do better than average," which means I'm going to collect a profit on this policy. And that's the exact mentality that leads people into active investing because they think they're smart and that they can, and a lot of people are. Don't get me wrong. 50% of people are better than average, but
but I'm
just
not
because,
smarter than
just
Warren
because,
Buffett.
yeah, exactly, exactly. It's not just being smarter than average. It's being smart enough that you are above that mean as opposed to the median intelligence that will make you a return on the stock market. And historically, that has been 90 to 95%, which means you have to be better at this than 90 to 95% of people to do better than passive investing. If you think you can do that, by all means, shoot your shot. But mutual funds are always hiring. I don't know how. I don't know why people still invest in them, but just by the way, people who own mutual funds are not invested in mutual funds.
Yeah.
But
we'll get into that in a second. I just want to ask you,
yeah,
do you do any active stock picking in amongst your
I do.
portfolio?
Yeah, so kind of the way my portfolio works is I have some real estate, I have some gold as an inflation hedge, which we can talk about if you're interested. I'm not a gold bug by any means, but I just think it's a nice thing to have.
Yeah.
I have crypto, CS:GO skins, and then I have a retire two different. Well, I have three accounts that are stock related. I have a brokerage account, which is
Mm-hmm.
mostly just invested in kind of long specific sectors.
Yep.
I wouldn't really call it active. It's more passive in the sense that um, I'm looking at individual sectors that I want to be invested in, and then I'm just buying like an ETF or something like that,
Yep.
as opposed to. So it's active in the sense that I'm picking the sector. It's not active in the sense that I'm picking the stock that's in the sector. I have the majority of my retirement savings in just a normal 401k that's just tracking passive. I would say 80% of my investments in the stock market are all passive, and I
Yep.
have 20% which are active, which are me just you'll see me typing in chat sometimes or typing something in the stock channel like, hey, here's something I'm interested in, here's something I'm looking at.
Yeah.
But yeah, the vast majority of what I'm invested in is not active. It's passive.
Yep. Um, for myself, for those that are wondering, I've pretty well got 95% of my uh, I actually no, I don't actually think I own any individual stocks. I own all ETFs that are on the stock market. Uh, all of my stocks are all passive ETFs. That's what I've chosen for myself, and because I just want to sort of set it and forget it. Like I in Australia we have a super fund. So your employer pays 9.5. That's just now been increased to 10%, towards your retirement. So your employer pays that for you automatically, and goes into a super account that you can't access till you're like 65. I think it's great, but you can't access it till then. I wanted to get more money before then. So I've just started looking at ways that I can have more money while I'm still younger, and have gone towards the passive investing style because I've seen that I'm not smarter than Warren Buffett. Hell no. I did try one stock. There was one stock that I traded at one point in my past. Was it a funeral company? It actually I ended up turning a profit on it because COVID started.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's an anecdote. Holy shit.
That was a very that was whew, I felt kind of bad on that one. But I was like, I'm closing this position. This is not gonna be good. I cannot own this for very long. um, but yeah, I choose something that will have low cost. So I will not choose mutual funds because they are not low cost and they are not passive. If you're buying mutual funds, something that they won't tell you, like, because they're actively stock picking and trying to beat the market and give you a return. If you're purchasing mutual funds, you're only getting you're still going to be on average worse than those that invest in your low cost ETFs. So, for example, one that I purchase is IVV is the ticker here in Australia. It's a similar to VOO in the States. It's just an S&P 500 ETF. So I buy one, and it invests the money that's in there across all the different S&P 500 companies. I get a dividend as a return. The management fee is 0.04% for that fund. That's like it's near nothing because it requires no work. It's all just automated. Nobody has to look at any charts. It's just, oh, they're in. All right, cool. Invest. Don't care. Your mutual funds, where they're doing the active pickers, they need to cover their losses. They need to cover their brokerage fees for buying and selling in large quantities very frequently. They're going to have your much higher percentage sets of fees, which is why I don't particularly like them. And because they're active investing, they're not going to outperform the passive investor in the long run. What are your thoughts on that line of thinking?
Yeah, no, I think you kind of exactly explained it. And I think when you remember that the average mutual fund, right, assuming there's two different types of investments, you can either be invested in an ETF or you can be invested in a mutual fund. Statistically, there's no way for the mutual funds to outperform passive investing if passive investing and ETF investing are literally doing what the market average is. You can't, again, it's zero sum. If one mutual for one specific mutual fund to do well,
Another
then
has to do
another mutual
poorly.
fund has to do poorly, right? And you just described why on average most do poorly, and that's because they have higher trading fees, because they have more people employed, because they're paying $25,000 a year for all of their Bloomberg terminals. They're going onto the rooftop of their building and throwing rocks at poor people who are walking on the ground. Like that's expensive, right? There's a lot of things that go into running a mutual fund that cost money, as opposed to literally just buying a stock, rebalancing every quarter, sending out prospectuses and quarterly reports. Other than that, there's not really much to running an ETF.
Yeah.
And the one thing that has become really popular is, and it's kind of always been popular, but it's kind of been an inside secret. It is the fact that when your ETF holds stock, they are also making money from you holding the stock because they can lend it. They can lend it
Yeah.
to short sellers. So
The short sellers that
it's
do poorly.
yeah, very poorly, by the way, extremely poorly. Most short sellers, by the way, are not the people that you think of, like whoever it is that Wall Street Bets is angry at this week. The majority of people who are selling stocks short are using it as a hedge for their portfolio because they think that they're very smart, very smart boys, and that they need to hedge away risk. And
They
if
think
they
they
do
have
so, then
wrinkly
they'll
brains,
yeah, which
but their
their
brains
their
are very
brains
smooth.
yeah. Yeah, so the majority of people who are shorting the market, who are buying stocks to short the market, are mutual funds,
Yeah, and I think
and
the thing
they
is,
and they use it. Yeah,
people will go that like they'll go, oh look, I'm hedging my risk. They will try and sell you on why they're hedging their risk, on why they're doing these shorts to cover losses. It's like, okay, cool. So that means you're helping covering your losses by going into something that is going to lose you money anyway if you don't if
right.
it doesn't go
Yeah,
the way you want. It
right.
makes
Yeah,
it makes like no sense, and they're trying to talk about the way that they'll maintain their money and keep it increasing, but just no, that just doesn't work for most of them. It's very very few that actually will.
right.
um
And it's kind of difficult to come into a Discord like this because I reckon and say you should be doing passive investing because it is, by the way, the best decision. It's just hard though because I think the one thing that a lot of people in here enjoy is that they tend to be young. They tend to be on the younger side. I mean, I'm sure we have someone who's in their 30s, 40s, and 50s in here, but they tend to be on the younger side. They're interested in
are
finance.
we talking
They
about
see
hostile?
stocks as like What was that?
Are we talking about hostile?
No, maybe I don't know.
Maybe.
But it's more the fact that they find stocks interesting and they want to take the knowledge that they're learning and they want to apply it, right? And the
Yeah.
way they apply it is to be actively investing. And it's very hard, and I don't want to discourage people from hearing, oh, it turns out the best way to invest is passive, so therefore I'm just not going to pay attention to it. I'm going to invest in a passive fund, and when I'm 65, I'm going to retire. Because for a lot of people, that's just not interesting. It's going to make them lose interest in the entire market, and then you're going to get people who aren't invested at all.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a balancing act, right? I always tell people don't make a Robinhood account. Like, well,
Yeah.
make a Robinhood account and get the free stocks, but don't buy into that sort of, oh, it's a game. I'm going to buy some short
Yellow
term
stock.
YOLO VIX. I'm going to buy some VIX options because I think the stock market's going to crash this week, or I'm going to buy call options on the S&P because I think the stock market's going to stunk this week. Like, that's not how you should be thinking about investing, and you're not investing, you're just gambling at that point.
Yeah.
But I'm always hesitant to tell people that don't do any active investing or don't pick any stocks that you like, because really the best way to learn, um, you can get a degree at a school, or you can get a degree by spending money in the stock market and learning from your mistakes. Truthfully, like, I'm 100% a
Yeah.
believer on that, because there are investments that I made personally that were bad investments, and you don't realize until reality hits you that I shouldn't have been investing in that. And the good investors, the 10% of them, will take a bad investment and study it way, way more than ever doing anything else.
Yeah.
Um,
Now,
so,
speaking of
if you're
that,
young, yeah.
I think we're actually starting to trend into our next topic, which is going to come as our part three. So I'm just going to pause this right here. So we've hit our 20-minute mark for the second part of this podcast, the stock portion. Hope you all enjoyed this section of the podcast, having a nice little chat about stocks, about passive and active investing, and what we do ourselves, and hope you all get a bit of inspiration and can go on and learn from that. Feel free to ask questions. Come and join us again in part three, where we're going to be talking about the psychology of investing, because that plays a major role in so many people's portfolios, and more than they realize. So thank you all for coming for part two of the Positive EV podcast, and we'll see you for part three.